Good afternoon, everybody. We're really excited. I know I always say it, but today we are doing a remote broadcast from Weld County, Colorado. If you don't know Weld County, you will after today's episode. But Weld County is an incredible place. Greeley is the largest city in the county, and it is call it the oil and gas county of Colorado. There's a lot of other stuff going on here today. We're delighted to be broadcasting live from Stockman's Cafe and Coffee Shop in the producers building. We're going to spend some time with some of the oil and gas commissioners and others involved in local government. And we're also going to have a chance to hang out here in the cafe and the coffee shop and see what the mood is. And last but not least, we've got a rig tour coming up. So this is the part of Colorado that loves oil and gas. And so they've been completely hospitable and couldn't be nicer to us, so we can't wait to spend the day. But let's kick off and see what's happening in the world before we talk about what's happening in Weld County. Mike Bradley, what do you got?
Hey, man, I'm going to try to keep it pretty brief because I know Colin and Craig have a lot to talk about here. But look, the market is green today, and one of the things we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks in our strategist piece is concern with crude oil time spreads really taking it on the chin over the last couple weeks or so. You know, what we saw just recently is WTI broke down to around $65. It held those levels, and that was very, very important that it held those levels. And so we've got sort of a double bottom going on there for those technical gurus out there. So we've rallied back up. The group has rallied on the back of it. But you know what? We're really not making any ground. We're just kind of going sideways. I think the market's looking to take its directive from what OPEC's doing, coronavirus issues out there and the likewise. And so we're now entering basically late summer. A lot of people are going to be going on a vacation. And so I think what we're going to see is that we're going to see a market that's not going to really have any direction to it. We need to, really focus on technicals rather than fundamentals. And then so until something really breaks from a company-wide level or OPEC or something of that nature, I think we're going to be sort of in this sideways range for quite a bit of time here. So things look great today. We still like the fundamentals into the end of this year and into 2022, but I just think right now there's just really nothing driving the market one way or the other. And so we're kind of in a, kind of a sideways pattern.
I know you said the market's watching the technicals, Mike, but I assume the Delta, return of COVID, are those the stats we're really going to be watching for to understand the oil market, or what are people keying in on?
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, like I said, in the last couple of weeks, we've been, raising a little bit of a yellow flag here on time spreads have been really in an upward path since October. They really got crushed here since the beginning of August, and they look to have stabilized. That is obviously telling you the physical market is getting weaker, still in backwardation, still undersupplied, but something is affecting the physical markets. And I don't think it's crude oil production from OPEC. I think it's more stuff that's going on in China, and global demand is weakening. So we have to keep an eye on that. And so, yes, I think global COVID issues is going to be something that's going to drive the markets from here. It's not going to be a supply issue. It's going to be a demand issue.
Okay. Well, Craig Webster is you're not a regular Craig, but we go get you when something big happens in the call it the greater ESG universe. And yesterday we had the IPCC report come out. It's 3,500 pages. So Mike and I were betting only Colin Fenton has read it at this point. But actually, Craig, you've gone through it. What would you tell us about it? I know it's hard to synthesize really quickly, but what would you tell us?
Yeah, so the IPCC report, which is the IPCC is a UN body. It's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is the 6th report that they've put out. It's really a distillation of scientific research that's out there already. And so it's not necessarily news for those who are actually following the research. The first report came out in 1990. There's been 5, obviously, since until now. And this is probably the first one where this many people are actually paying attention to it. You know, what it actually says isn't particularly surprising. It says things like humans are causing warming of the atmosphere and land and the oceans, that the change is accelerating. It's affecting weather patterns and extreme weather events, precipitation, et cetera. There isn't really an immediate pathway to reversal, and so it says a lot of things that we've been hearing about already. I think what's new here is sort of, it's a little bit more definitive, or maybe a lot more definitive. And anyone reading the press around it will see that the reporters latching on to that it's sort of saying with certainty that this is being caused by humans, and here are some of the potential outcomes. And so in 3,900 pages, it goes through a variety of outcomes, ranging from extreme warming to reversal and arresting climate change. I think when we read a report like this, the thing to really take away isn't to necessarily nitpick about what is what you think is exactly right, or what is very likely, and scientists use these sort of terms, right? Extreme, very likely, not likely. But it's really to think about what the impact might be. And coming up in November is the UN's annual climate meeting of nations, right? COP26. It happens every year, except last year it was canceled due to COVID. This is the kind of thing policymakers are looking at. It's this kind of work. It's the IEA's Net Zero 2050 report that came out. And so how does it actually influence thinking? How does it influence policy? How might that change, stimulus and investment and things that matter for people who are investors or allocators of capital? And so I think that's what people should really be thinking about when they see a report like this come out.
So maybe not to put words in your mouth, but it's more of what it was, but just a little higher volume, or things are now in bold, or it's just got a little more push to it, but no, not a change in findings. Is that fair? I'm putting words in your mouth, Greg.
Yeah, and I don't know that I wouldn't go so far as to say there's no new change in findings. There's an entire section on where we're at as far as climate science and climate modeling, and the sort of strengths and weaknesses of it and what's evolved. The last report was 2013, so obviously things have changed. The models are far more sophisticated. And so I think there are, new findings along the way, but the certainty with which the science community is willing to sort of stand up and say definitively, this is what's causing it. And, not everything in the report is definitive, but specifically the sort of the anthropogenic nature of climate change is far more definitive now. And I think that's what you read about. And in the media, it becomes a little bit dramatic as far as all of a sudden we're certain. I think many in the scientific community already felt that way, but these are documents that require a great deal of consensus. And so they always tend to be, worded in a certain way. There's a certain level of conservatism to the approach. But at this point now, I would say it's more definitive, I think is one of the changes.
Interesting. Colin, let's jump to you. I don't know if you had any reflections on the IPCC document, but otherwise we want to see the world according to Colin today.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Well, a lot of the warnings and forecasts that we've had on COBT for many months now have come to fruition here to date in 2021. So we thought it would be time to start to prepare for what comes next. Obviously, we're in the dog days of summer. Labor Day is coming up in the United States, and we have risk after that moment in time. But first, let's review what did and did not come to pass so far in the first 8 months of 2021. And among what worked is the call for inflation to beat expectations and to be an issue for policymakers. And just in the past week, we saw the Bank of England throw in the towel and admit, they were wrong on inflation. It's in consumer prices, particularly housing, groceries, and now gasoline. And so we do see retail gasoline prices calling on crude oil. And so even though we do have that compression in prompt time spreads that Mike talked about, consumer prices are still with us. Now, we also have the late summer slump in oil demand that we've talked about for quite a while, and for the reason that I think we all expected. the uptick in cases with the Delta variant, but thankfully also that call that the fatalities would not match the uptick in cases has also proven to be correct. So we have more barriers to unfettered economic activity, but thankfully not a return to total and hard lockdowns. We also found that the $65 price is the speed bump in WTI in the prompt market. The reason for that is we're not yet in a super cycle. We have the idle spare capacity globally, but it's not accessible because by definition it's being withheld from the market. So we also got the request from President Biden that we thought might happen, where he asked OPEC for supply, which was provided. We've had the gas price boom anticipated by our research team and also by many of our guests on COBT. That continues to be a durable story worldwide. Yes, part of it is Russia's gamemanship, but it really is just a core supply-demand story and really makes an exceptionally strong case for investment in U.S. LNG, not only in the near term, but looking out many decades into the future. And then, as we just talked about, the AR6 report came out, and between Craig and Dr. Coonan and what they've warned us to expect, I think they've clearly been spot on what the science would say, but also how the media would, try to interpret it. And then, of course, amid all the breathless certainties, another thing that's quietly been happening in California and in the West is a more quiet pivot to embrace forest management. Because, of course, yes, having dry conditions, hot and dry conditions in California can increase the probability of severe wildfire, but you actually need to have the fuel, the detritus, the debris on the forest floor to act as the fuel for that. And so we're beginning to see people more carefully pay attention to what's happening with the fuel stock. What did not come to pass, Bitcoin is a bit surprising here. It stopped its descent a bit prematurely. We thought it would be really more in free fall into the early fall. That seems to indicate that the inflation story is more sticky from a Bitcoin perspective than we had anticipated. Russia did not have geopolitical adventures during the Olympics as we thought they may. Remember back in 2008, we had the invasion of Georgia. 2014, during Sochi, we had the Green Men in Syria and Ukraine. This time around, Russia's gamesmanship was confined to business affairs in natural gas. Simone Biles, we did not have any kind of forecast for her performance at the Olympics, but let's face it, the pressure on her was unbelievably pronounced. There was some thought that she might win 5 gold medals at the Tokyo Olympics, maybe even 6 medals overall, which has never been done before. So an expectation of perfection and world records. And the reason we bring it up is, of course, the reason she did not get 5 or 6 medals was just this amazingly courageous decision to focus on her mental health and her physical well-being, which is good for her, and also just an inspiration for so many people worldwide on why that's important. Plus also the generosity and leadership she showed to her teammates, allowing Michaela Skinner to win the silver medal in the vault. Obviously, the behavior of a champion, so thumbs up from COBT for Ms. Biles. And then finally, what to think about looking into the future. As Mike already said, prompt crude oil time spreads have weakened over the past month. Looking at the twos, they're at 17% versus 22% a month ago. But volatility has simultaneously doubled in the prompt market. It's now at 38% from 19, and the mid-curve structure is strengthening in NYMEX WTI. It averaged $11.25 looking at month 12 to month 60. So that's a warning sign to expect some stagflationary pressures as we head into 2022. And it also gives us a heightened warning about what's going to happen after the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package is passed, as the odds strongly favor. We're probably going to have either an economic food coma or a brain freeze. Pick your metaphor. And part of the reason is all of that enormous spending is just going to amplify these inflationary pressures that are already in the system. That's going to force rates higher. Probably better than even odds, sooner than the dots would have you believe. So we're going to see more and more chatter about a rate hike in 2022, which draws parallels with 1994. And if you're familiar with what happened at that time, rates were lifted in a way that was viewed as sudden, early, and big. And if we did have a rate hike in the near future, let's not forget that as we went into the COVID period, we had a very sudden drop in interest rates in the Fed funds market in March 2020, just removing that kind of support would feel very, very strong, and a 50 or 100 basis point increase in the near term would very much be another speed bump for markets.
Okay. Well, there was a lot in there, guys. A lot going on. I can tell you over at Stockman's Cafe and Coffee Shop, the coffee is still the same price. So no inflation here in Weld County. Thanks for the lead in, guys. So we're going to take you on a bit of a tour now. Next stop, we're going to visit with some of the commissioners in the county. Then we'll be back at the cafe, and then we'll be out at the rig. So stay tuned. Here we go. Welcome to Weld County. All right. Well, welcome back, guys. We're down at the county commissioner's office in Weld County. And when I came in, our team came in, I saw this sign. I don't know if you can read that too well. Proud supporter of the oil and gas industry, Weld County, our families, our economy. I think this sign captures why we're here. There are not enough people. You don't find those signs in many places anymore. But let me welcome a couple of guests, including Jeff Nupp from TPH. He runs our Denver office. So many of you know Jeff. But we've got Mike Freeman from District 1 here in the county, and Steve Marino, who's an at-large district representative. So it's great to have you, let you guys visit with us, but let me thank you for letting us hang out with you a little bit.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure to have these conversations because we're talking about things that matter to us and matter to the citizens of Weld County, right? We're talking about oil and gas, and we're talking about how important it is as a partnership between oil and gas and our number one thing in Weld County, which is agriculture. And it really is a partnership.
Well, we've had a great time just visiting, helping us get to know the county a little bit. Part of what drew us to the county, and Jeff, you gave me these stats, but Colorado's oil and gas production is 1.5 million BOE a day. You are 60% of all the oil and gas production, and you're 80+% of all the oil production. So this is a really important county. But I guess in talking to you, it's not the number one industry. There's so much other going on here, but I don't know, Mike and Steve, if you can talk about
absolutely.
that.
As Commissioner Freeman was alluding to about how important ag is here, we recognize as number one in the state of Colorado, and we're also recognized anywhere from number 7 or 8 in the nation here. So Weld County does have a big impact of feeding not only the state of Colorado, but the nation here. But again, tying back to the fossil fuels and everything else, that's a big part of the economy there too. So I had a little conversation earlier about how this area here is very unique and how we have been very supportive of all energies and how it impacts this county and the state of Colorado.
I mean, the stat that you mentioned, Mike, which was pretty incredible. What did you say, that the county with the most lamb in all of the country?
All of the country. Number 1 in lamb, number 2 in beef, and I think number 4 or 5 in dairy.
So you really get the impression, so there's about 300,000 plus in the county. Greeley's the biggest town at 100,000, but the county just seems, it's just a pro-business place. Is that a fair way to think about it?
That is a fair way. I think that, and the other part that, it's when we talk about oil and gas, but we think of ourselves as all energy, right? We have the most solar facilities in Weld County of any other county in the state. We also have more wind facilities than any other county in the state. So we're an all above energy.
Absolutely. And this is one of the largest counties in the state of Colorado. We're ranked number 3 in the state of Colorado as far as land mass. We have almost 4,000 square miles in this county, but we also have a little more uniqueness to it. That we have 32 municipalities within this county here.
And we were talking about this before. So the way the county is governed is there's 3 districts, and then there's 2 at-large representatives. So the 5 of you are the commissioners who make decisions and provide leadership to the county.
We are, and Weld County is a little bit unique in that we don't have a county manager. So a lot of counties have county managers that, kind of make most of the decisions. In Weld County, pretty much everything comes through the 5 of us. And so we're a really hands-on board of county commissioners.
Absolutely. In 1976, the voters passed an initiative that actually made us a home rule county. So, that's what allows us to do what we do here, Matt. And obviously, it's another part of why the fiscal responsibility is there, too, that we don't bring any indebtedness to the citizens of this county.
So that's pretty fascinating. What a home rule county? Do you mind, Steve, just explaining that a little more? Because you do seem to have more local authority here.
It gives us an opportunity to. We could be more restrictive. We could be a little bit less restrictive in some things of getting the government work done here. But when you look at what happens with the mill levy as an example, there we have one of the lowest mill levies in the state of Colorado. We're at, I think it's 15.3 or something like that. There, we could be up to 22 mil. But again, the reason for that gives that flexibility with the board, and we have a different body with this home rule charter. It's called the county council. They are an elected body, just like the board of county commissioners, that kind of just have a board that will listen to citizens that outside of visiting with your electeds. So those conversations can be directed to the board for types of recommendation. But this governing body here is still responsible for the fiscal part of the budgeting for the governing part of the county here.
So Mike, we were talking about this before, but every time Colorado comes up in an oil and gas context, somebody's going to mention permitting. Somebody's going to mention the next election. I mean, those are the things for those of us outside of Colorado that you're always keying in on. Do you want to post people on permitting and how that's going?
Well, and so one of the things as we get to this process, Colorado's probably got the most strict regulations in the United States as far as oil and gas goes. But we continue to go be above and beyond. And that's why when we say we're overregulated here, we truly are overregulated. And then when you add Senate Bill 181 into that, that's the part that started causing the most issues. And that's the part that when we started having the conversation with the COGCC about permitting. So we actually started our own oil and gas energy department so that we could do our own permitting here in Weld County. We've worked very stringently with the COGCC over about an 18-month period to get that in process to where we now have an MOU with the COGCC that says that they will recognize Weld County's permitting process as far as what goes on the surface, because that really is a surface issue. That's not a COGCC issue. And so I think it's going to benefit all of our companies in the oil and gas industry out there that's trying to produce new wells, and it makes the transition a little bit smoother.
So you brought up a really interesting point, which is agriculture is so huge here. When you guys approve a permit, you're very sensitive to the surface issues as to how that's going to impact a business on the surface. That's just something that a local authority is going to know better than a larger authority.
Some bureaucracy down in Denver doesn't understand the land use up in Weld County. Yeah. Let's be honest. So, at the end of the day, I think it benefits our surface owners as well as it benefits the industry to have that kind of a process in place where they can work together and they can figure out where the best place is for these sites.
So you guys, just looking through the bios of all the commissioners, I was struck by how many of you have lived here for quite a long time, like your longtime residents of.
I'm a lifetime resident of Weld County,
fourth generation. So is that a lot of the people like that have been here a long time? I know the county's growing. There's more people coming in.
I think we have a lot of new people in the county. I think we might be getting down to where we're in the minority of people that have lived here our whole life. Obviously, when you continue to see the amount of growth we're having in Weld County, that people have got to be coming from somewhere. So, but when you get out, especially in my district, where it's way more rural than the rest of the county, there's a lot of people up there that have been here their whole lives, farmed and ranched. Their parents did, their grandparents did, and they're still out on those farms.
Now, you had a great stat about your district when you compared the cattle population.
So I said I have more cows than people in my district.
You have more cows than people.
And I'm okay with that.
But are they difficult constituents? I mean, do they bug you? I don't know what cows want these days.
Yeah, well, they probably want the government to leave them alone and tell them that they're doing too much.
They're kind of libertarian cows. But, you just touched on it, which is, a lot of times the world gets painted as red and blue and anti-oil and gas and pro-oil and gas. And there's lots of ways people have figured out how to divide us these days. But the issues, if you're a rural community versus a urban community, that's something that has certainly come up in previous episodes of ours.
Well, I think the red-blue divide per se is not nearly as big as the urban-rural divide in the state of Colorado. I truly believe that's the case. So, as you continue to go forward, we continue to work on it. I forget where it was. It might have been some place where I was given a speech at one point, and they said if you could put bulletin boards up as you come into Weld County, what would they say to know what Weld County is about? And my answer
this is a great question.
Weld County feeds the world. Weld County fuels the world. That's what Weld County is about.
But other than that, we don't do much.
Yeah.
Just feed you guys and fuel you guys. But it is fascinating. I would get Colin Fenton and Mike Bradley in here, a part of our team. But as you guys are listening to this, but the fact that and this happens in West Texas, of course, too. That's capital of oil and gas, capital of wind, capital of solar. Like the rural world keeps coming through for the rest of us. And you'd think that those of us who are, living in the city would be a little nicer to the rural community that's, taking care of the rest of us. But I don't know, Colin, anything? Colin is in outside of Boston, Mass. So very similar to Weld County.
Very similar, yeah.
But Colin, anything you'd throw in?
Yeah, I would say Wellesley, Massachusetts definitely feels like rural relative to Boston sometimes. I guess picking up on the Boston or the billboard question, I love it. Feed the world, fuel the world. But can you give the audience a bit of a sense of what the plan is for the next 2 to 5 years in your meetings? What are, just a couple of the highlights that you think about, wrestle with as you plan for the county's future over the next couple of years?
Well, I guess I would start with some of the legislation that just passed in this last session. Senate Bill 260 over transportation. So all of a sudden, we've got a transportation bill that just passed in the state that doesn't have anything to do with transportation, doesn't have anything to do with building more road miles or safety or anything else. It's a climate change bill. It's all about greenhouse gases and how we're going to sort through that and still be able to get the infrastructure in place that we need to have in place for the safety as we see growth in Weld County. I think the other thing that we're going to be dealing with a whole lot is the whole air quality commission and some of the rules and regulations that are coming down on that, not only affecting the oil and gas industry, but also affecting our ag industry. So, I think that's one of the things that we're just going to continue to have those conversations, continue to be a part of those rulemaking processes, and continue to make sure that our message is heard loud and clear. Whether we can do anything about it or not, I'm not sure, but we're certainly not going to sit back and just get run over. We're going to continue to fight for the citizens of Weld County and our way of life.
And taking on to that, it's not just what's happening here in Colorado, what we foresee as being the challenges here from our legislators here. It's still at the federal level, too, what we're seeing nationally here from what, as Commissioner Freeman was saying here, with the climate change and look at more renewables and everything else. And when we look at this here, too, is how are the grids being put together here with what's happening here for the change that they're looking at here nationally here. And that's going to affect us here in Weld County. It's going to affect the state of Colorado.
I think what worries me is, I don't know how thick the infrastructure bill is. I'm sure it's pretty thick. That IPCC report that came out yesterday on climate is 3,900 pages. I'm just worried we don't have enough people on the planet actually reading all this stuff.
Well, I think it go back to Nancy Pelosi. We got to pass it so we can find out what's in it. It's extreme. Here's the other thing.
There ought to be a rule. A bill can only be 10 pages long. We gotta, it's like a baby. You gotta feed it just a little.
The other thing, and I agree with you on the issues with the national level. We took how long to get to where we are energy independent, and we've gone. It's taken Biden 6 months to make us no longer energy independent. So that's a scary thought when you think about it in the long run.
Yeah, I think we're all of us in the oil and gas world are surprised at how quickly we blew through the importance of that and seem to have forgotten about it.
I think the frustrating part to me is we already know how much safer we produce oil and gas in this country. So instead of making it almost impossible to do that, putting these huge hurdles up to be able to produce fossil fuels here in the United States, in Colorado, where we're doing it safely, we're doing it in a way that makes sense. No, let's don't do that. Let's go buy it from countries that hate us, that are not producing it in a safe manner. How does that make sense in the long run?
Maybe the next ballot initiative in Colorado should be a proposal to restrict Russian drilling permits.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if they'll be binding, but it might pass. Well, you guys have been really great to visit with us. I think everybody's I know we'll hear from a lot of people. We know that you're doing all you can for industry and the people. And so we really just wanted to come out here and do a little commercial for one of the great counties in the United States.
Thanks for coming and visiting with us, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to tell our story.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a great county, and we love it here.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're back on Adventures in Weld County. We're back at Stockman's Cafe. I've just ordered a grilled ham and cheese. I'm going off the diet because it's like, why would I miss the chance for a grilled ham and cheese at Stockman's? We've got an all-star cast down here at the cafe, and hopefully I'll get these introductions right. But we've got Commissioner Sane of Weld County, and then we've got Bruce Barker, the county attorney. So he's here to make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't say. And then Ed Clark, he's the former mayor of Greeley and a city councilman now. Commissioner Scott James, who was a radio talk show host, or is
a little bit.
He's got so he should take over here. Tom Parco, who's head of planning for the county. And then I think maybe the man of the hour, Jason Maxey, who's the head of oil and gas in the county. So, wow. Well, thanks so much for letting us hang out with you guys.
We really appreciate you guys.
Well, there have been some great stats I keep missing. Somebody mentioned to us there have been more wells drilled in Weld County than have maybe been drilled in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and another country combined. But it's some unbelievable stat. I think one thing we were noticing in talking to Mike and Steve is that, the county is not just about oil and gas. The county's about a lot. Agriculture. We're talking about just down the road is the huge meat packing company, JBS. But anyway, Tom, do you want to jump in on this, which is from a planning perspective? Like, so much is happening in the county. You must have people constantly wanting to do a solar farm or a well or whatever.
I mean, Commissioner Sane just hit it right on the head. Weld County is the third largest county in Colorado. Very diverse. We've got pockets of urbanized areas down in the tri-town areas, all the way up to really rural areas when you get up to New Raymer and Grover. And so that diversified economy brings a lot with it. So you're right, it's not just oil and gas, but we've seen really kind of spark an interest too in solar and wind, and all of that kind of combined with the oil and gas industry really makes it kind of for a nice mix of a diversification of the energy industry.
This is the thing that it's interesting in the public markets right now. All the investors are saying they want oil and gas companies to become more predictable, more reliable, pay more dividends, get off of the roller coaster. And Ed, you were saying this before, but the county has agriculture and it has oil and gas, and those two tend to balance each other a little bit. Or I think it was Mike and Steve saying, whenever we made a lot of oil and gas money, we spent it on one-time projects. We didn't build it into the budget, which was kind of fascinating. But Ed, what's your experience? You're the former mayor of Greeley, so you've
I got to be lucky enough or unlucky enough to be the mayor of Greeley when the Great Recession happened around 2007. And I remember in 2009 or 10 when the young guys started pulling up at the come and goes with the $50,000 trucks, that the oil and gas industry was going to help pull us out of this deal, and they have. I mean, that's why I'm pro oil and gas. Is I know that they pump money into the schools, they pump money into the economy, they directly put money into the city budget in a variety of ways, and I'm proud to be the county seat, represent the county seat of Weld County.
Well, Jason, let's get you in here because a couple of years ago, the county, and I'll mess up this history, but the county formed its own oil and gas division, if you will. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So oil and gas used to be a part of Tom's planning department, and through some changes with the state, mainly Senate Bill 181 that they signed into law back in April 2019, the county commissioners have the foresight and history behind.
So that's when you knew, like, hey, we need to kind of do more of our own thing because of this local control type philosophy that was coming.
Senate Bill 181 specifically wrote in local control as far as part of that legislation. And so the commissioners took our past history with oil and gas and how it's been for the county as a whole over the years and said, where do we want to go with it? And how do we want to take more control over that local authority and land use perspective for siting the surface patterns? And they said, let's form our own department for it. And so very fortunate to have that trust and from the commissioners to be a part of that department and have a staff. That's what we do. We look at surface locations.
So you do permits.
Permitting, yeah.
I would apply to you.
Regulatory enforcement for permitting in Weld County, and also for large pipelines that carry the product obviously to market.
So the thing that Commissioner Freeman was talking a little bit earlier about was the way the COGCC is going to interact with you guys. And then in the pregame, Bruce, we discovered that you've been involved as the county attorney with the COGCC on how that's going to work.
Yes.
What could you tell us about that relationship or that dynamic?
They just went through new rulemaking in last fall. So they have new rules that they put into place. One of those new rules says that they sort of waive the 2,000-foot setback requirement if in fact there is an alternative location analysis that's conducted by the local government. That's exactly what we've been doing with our permitting. So it was an easy leap to get into this IGA with the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission so that we can work together, better coordination, better communication. And we got it started in February, I think, of this year, in February or March. And so we're starting through with permitting that is we're working jointly with them. So that's, I think, a great benefit to operators.
And is it showing up in the process yet? Is it easier to get a permit now than it was not too long ago? Or do you see the benefits of it yet?
I'd say it's going to take a while. And it's because the state, when they did their new rules, they came up with a whole boatload of new permit forms that the operators are learning how to deal with those. So there's a sort of a learning curve that's taking place right now. I'd say probably in about 6 months they'll get the hang of it. The coordination, though, I think will help some of that. And that's where Jason comes in with his department.
Maybe I ask you, Commissioner James, do you think Colorado over the last 2-3 years is starting to appreciate oil and gas more?
I think the folks are starting to appreciate oil and gas. In fact, I think they've never stopped appreciating oil and gas. The regular people who benefit not only at the industry level, but the industries that benefit from the industries that benefit from the industries are all very appreciative of the revenue that's generated, the lifestyles that are afforded by oil and gas. I think the regulatory environment will soon realize when they start putting together Colorado budgets how much they need to appreciate oil and gas. It is an interesting quandary in the fact that there's so much symbiosis in Weld County. You've heard from Commissioner Freeman that we're number one by about 2 times over, $2.1 billion annually in agricultural output. But quite frankly, the oil and gas subsidizes that agricultural output. So not only are you affecting people's livelihoods that are directly involved with the industry, but indirectly involved as well. We couldn't be the number 8 ag producing county in the nation if it weren't for oil and gas. The two feed off one another. It all comes back to people make their livelihoods on the land here. Whether it's the minerals that lie underneath, whether it's the agricultural output that's on top, it all kind of ties back to how everything operates symbiotically in Weld County. And I think that our lawmakers in Denver forget that. We have it in Weld County.
I can't remember who said this to me, but yesterday somebody commented to me, well, we got this new infrastructure bill. Too bad it'll be 5 years till we build anything. They were just being cheeky. But there is you could almost have a map of the country In certain places, it's just really hard to get anything permitted. In other places, it's relatively easy. And that philosophy really kind of defines communities in a way. I don't know. I mean, Jason, you see, what is it about a government of any type that I wonder what drives it to be a little more pro-business as opposed to not. I don't. There's a cultural thing that happens. I don't know how to explain it.
My opinion on that is the fact that number one, that comes from leadership. So that's very indicative of the leadership that you have and their approach to business as a whole and what is important for their community that they're serving in. But I think on the staff level, it's that understanding about the rules and the processes and knowing that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I mean, when we're looking at oil and gas development specifically, it's completely different when you're down in the southwestern part of the county compared to the northeastern part of the county.
Yeah.
And part of that is due to just the vastness of and size of both counties. But it's also the staff's understanding of the rules and the processes and also buying into that culture and that leadership about where the county is going and making sure that they are not a one-size-fits-all, that we're looking specifically, figuring out how we can make things work together from a compatibility standpoint.
I guess the other thing I noticed, I'm obviously like a Weld County, I don't know, I'm head of the fan club, the Houston Weld County Fan Club. But you also, there's 5 commissioners, as we've talked about. It's a full-time job. You're very, you want to do what's best for your community, and clearly jobs and tax revenues and infrastructure, these are things that you encourage industry. I mean, that funds all of this good stuff for the community. I know this is basic stuff, Ed. I don't know why the rest of the country doesn't think this way sometimes, but what's your take on it?
Well, we are tasked with providing for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Weld County. And I believe we provide health and safety by our public safety, by the Sheriff Reeves and what he does in our Sheriff's Department. For the health, we have a wonderful Weld County Department of Public Health and Environment. And what we do in permitting does look out for the health and safety and welfare of the citizens of Weld County. The welfare is so important because, you've heard us lament or talk about how impactful the oil and gas revenues are for our county. But as a county commissioner, one of the things that I worry about, quite frankly, is economic diversity. And I don't know why. Just the jobs and the supporting industries that are created via oil and gas truly diversify our economy. We get into not just the actual production of the mineral itself, but the harvest of the product, but to the distribution of the product and to all the industries that spring up around that business. And literally, that industry provides economic diversity. The diversity of jobs that are created because of oil and gas is monumentally important to Weld County. And as leaders, we have to pay attention to the health and safety and welfare of our community. And there's nobody that provides for a more rounded approach for us than the oil and gas industry.
So Ed, I was joking with you that I want to retire in Greeley. And I think luckily, because I'm pro oil and gas, you said you'd consider me for an application. But are there?
I'll run you this November if you want for a city council position.
Are there people moving in, or more people figuring out the great lifestyle here and coming in?
I think in Weld County, in the southern part of the county, we're starting to see the blue Democrats creep up. I still think Greeley is at least 60-40. And, we got to do everything we can to keep our conservative values and promote our conservative agenda up here. And a big part of that agenda is to keep it the way we've had it for years, agricultural based, gas and oil based. But I agree with Commissioner James that we need to diversify as well. But I think we do have opportunities for diversification that we've looked for and taking advantage of opportunities. When I was the mayor, we brought in Leprino, which was a huge shot for Greeley, a huge shot for Weld County. The cheese, the largest manufacturer of mozzarella cheese. And it's because we're pro-business.
That's
It's because the people elect us here and they expect us to be pro-business. So
See, I'll confess, I knew Leprino right away because I worked in a pizza place in high school. I remember the Leprino, those big things of cheese.
well, the best part of flying out to California and closing that deal was at the end of the tour for Leprino, they have a pizza making place, and they're always constantly making pizzas, because the minute that they get a pizza bubble that burns, they've got to stop the presses and they got to go back and figure out the right balance, so they don't have those what do they call them, little pizza burns or on top of the pizzas. So yeah, they're a pretty great outfit. The pizza's pretty good. So
It's really fun. Well, you guys have been so generous with your time and so nice to us. All of us at TPH, as you ever want anything like to get your message out, some oil and gas data, some jobs data, some company data, whatever you want, we're always in to help you guys, because you're helping the rest of us. You're feeding and fueling all of us.
there you go.
All right, guys, the